Sakshi, but even as the governor was giving all the details, inflation really does remain a challenge, doesn't it?
That's right, Sneha. Well, we'll start with, of course, inflation concerns remain, but let's start with the highlights, really. So first, the RBI policy announcement on expected lines, the RBI leaving the repo rate unchanged at 6.5%. Also leaving, of course, inflation and growth forecasts unchanged. Now, NDTV has been speaking to economists all morning, and this is really in line with estimates. Important to remember, of course, the inflation commentary, the commentary on liquidity, and the commentary on financial management as well. The governor clearly saying that, yes, it is a status quo policy announcement, but not just that. Of course, giving various details and on all aspects really, and the commentary really giving a near-term as well as a long-term outlook for the economy. So he did say that declining core inflation, Sneha, is a silver lining, which is essentially inflation minus food and energy costs. So that declining is a silver lining for the state of the economy. Core inflation, the governor said, has eased by around 140 basis points, which is significant, remember. Markets also clearly cheering this, giving it a thumbs up, giving the policy a thumbs up. Before the policy announcement, we saw them surge higher by 0.2%. While the policy announcement was on, we saw markets with an uptick of 0.3% and even higher. So the governor saying that, look, the long-term inflation outlook is clouded by uncertainties from the fall in Kharif sowing. However, he did say that in the near term, inflation is likely to soften on the correction of tomato, vegetable prices at large, and in the long run, of course, El Nino conditions, global food and energy prices will impact the inflation outlook. Of course, it has been an ongoing concern, but core inflation easing really is a relief and a sign of relief, as he said, a silver lining for the economy. So the inflation projection at 5.4% remains the same as earlier for 2023-24, he said. And remember, international crude oil prices since the last RBI monetary policy have averaged around $89 per barrel, which is higher than the $85 per barrel that was factored into RBI estimates. And remember, it has spiked to over $97 per barrel towards the end of September before easing to $90 per barrel earlier this month. So the rise in crude oil prices is unlikely to dent India's macroeconomic fundamentals, despite posing risks off and on to the outlook. The RBI governor clearly saying that, look, macro stability and inclusive growth is fundamental and is the way forward. He, of course, also said that India is really poised to be the new growth engine of the world.
Right, Sakshi. I mean, for an ordinary person like me, a salaried person who is watching what the governor, RBI governor has spoken, what is the big takeaway, the big one or two takeaways from this?
All right, Sneha. Well, as you mentioned, you know, the EMIs remaining the same, the interest rate really remaining the same is the big takeaway from, like you said, an average viewer watching at the moment. However, the other key takeaways, very interestingly, like I mentioned, inflation and growth. The RBI governor clearly painting a clear picture there for both the near term as well as the long term on inflation and growth. Of course, a lot of details on liquidity as well, where he did mention that, look, we may have to turn to OMO sales on government securities to, of course, manage liquidity. But those details as well as financial management details remain for the long term. In the near term, of course, EMI rates remaining the same, you know, that remains the key highlight. And inflation likely to soften, really. That is what is something that people at home watching at the moment. And like you said, the average viewer will want to know. So inflation in the near term softening on back of vegetable prices easing is the other key highlight.